Hello everybody, welcome to Brandon's Haunted Library. My name is Brandon, your undead librarian, and I read and talk about fantasy, literary fiction, and of course, horror. Thank you for choosing my video. Hope you stick around because today we're diving into a very special topic. Hispanic Heritage Month runs from September 15th to October 15th. And what better way to celebrate than by exploring some of the best horror books and films from Latin America and Spain. These stories not only bring us spine-tingling tales, but also weave in rich cultural elements and unique perspectives on the supernatural. So whether you're here for folklore, the terror, or the cultural deep dive, stay tuned because I've got some great recommendations for you. Kicking off the book section, we have Our Share of Night by Mariana Enriquez. Mariana Enriquez is an Argentinian writer, with this being her only novel translated to English, though she now has 2 short story collections. It's pretty long book for being a horror novel. It's just under 600 pages. It's an ambitious novel taking on multiple point of views in this epic family saga, spanning decades and taking on themes of grief, colonialism, and class disparities. Here's the synopsis. A woman's mysterious death puts her husband and son on a collision course with her demonic family. A young father and son set out on a road trip, devastated by the death of the wife and mother they both loved. United in grief, the pair travel to her ancestral home, where they must confront a terrifying legacy she has bequeathed. A family called the Order that commits unspeakable acts in search of immortality. For Gaspar the son, this maniacal cult is his destiny. As the Order tries to pull him into their evil, he and his fathers take flight, attempting to outrun a powerful clan that will do anything to ensure its own survival. But how far will Gaspar's father go to protect his child? And can anyone escape their fate? The scope and world building in this was incredible. I was amazed at what she accomplished with this. This epic was split into 6 parts, with each taking on different storytelling styles and influences as they take on different point of views and different time periods in a non-linear fashion. This added to the atmosphere of the novel, allowing Enriquez to reveal key plot details gradually and build the tension as the narrative unfolds across decades, while also highlighting the generational impact of the dark forces at play. The writing was eloquent and descriptive, creating a dark Gothic feel with some nauseating and graphic horror. This is definitely a book that challenges the boundaries of genre, giving us Argentine history under military dictatorship, family dynamics and father-son relationships, some surprisingly well-written romance, all sprinkled into a paranormal cult story involving gruesome and Lovecraftian rituals. And speaking of stories that push the boundaries of horror, we're going from Argentina's dark family saga to the monstrous tale from Mexico. If Our Share of Night left you haunted by its epic scale, wait until you meet the creature that's lurking in Monstrilio. This is a debut novel from Mexican novelist Gerardo Samano Cordova. There's a unique relationship with death that permeates Mexican culture. A view of death not as an end, but a continuity where the dead maintain an active presence in the lives of the living. For example, Dia de los Muertos celebrates the idea that the dead live on through memory and ritual, and that the dead can return to commune with the living during the holiday. Mexican horror often combines the mystical and the real, drawing from rich folklore traditions and the relationship with death. Monstrilio taps into these cultural themes while presenting a fresh modern take on them. At its core, Monstrilio is a story about a mother's grief after losing her son, which drives her to do something unnatural. She nurtures a piece of her son's lung into a living monstrous being. Here's the synopsis. Grieving mother Magos cuts out a piece of her deceased 11-year-old son Santiago's lung. Acting on fierce maternal instinct and the dubious logic of an old folktale, she nurtures the lung until it gains sentience, growing into a carnivorous little Monstrilio she keeps hidden within the walls of her family's decaying Mexico City estate. Eventually, Monstrilio begins to resemble the Santiago he once was, but his innate impulses, though curbed by his biological and chosen family's communal care, threaten to destroy this fragile second chance at life. Similar to Our Share of Night, this was split into 4 sections, each following different point of views. The first was from the point of view of the mother, which has a shocking opening where it was described in detail how she cuts open her dead son to remove his lung, and the final section following Monstrilio himself as he struggles to assimilate in the real world. Throughout, we see different manifestations of grief, and throughout raising deep questions about identity, transformation, and acceptance. The body horror was well written, and Samano Cordova's prose created an immersive atmosphere leading to unnerving feeling. The novel is slow-paced to build tension using the grotesque not just for shock, but as a way to explore deep psychological and emotional terrain. There's also many queer themes expertly woven into the story, complementing its exploration of identity and transformation. It provides a nuanced perspective on the character's internal struggles, particularly with self-acceptance and the fluidity of identity. His approach to exploring these themes is what elevates Monstrilio from a typical horror fiction into something more literary and profound. In combining grief, cultural themes on death, and body horror of transformation, Monstrilio creates a distinctive space in the Mexican horror genre and is an incredible read for Hispanic Heritage Month. I can't recommend it highly enough. Alright, now that we've had our fill of disturbing horror, let's lighten things up a bit. No, I'm just kidding. We're heading deeper into the wild and disturbing world of Jawbone. Get ready for a visceral experience that'll have you questioning reality and the dark depths of human emotion. I finished reading this recently, and boy did I enjoy this one. Well, maybe enjoy isn't the right word. It was all types of disturbing. Jawbone is by Monica Ojeda from Ecuador. Here's the synopsis. Fernanda and Anais are so close, they are practically sisters. A double image, inseparable. So how does Fernanda end up bound on the floor of a deserted cabin, held hostage by one of her teachers and estranged from Anais? When Fernanda, Anais, and their friends from the Delta Bilingual Academy convene after school, Anais leads them in thrilling but increasingly dangerous rituals to a rhinestoned, Dior-scented drag queen god of her own invention. Even more perilous is the secret Anais and Fernanda share, rooted in a dare in which violence meets love. Meanwhile, their literature teacher, Miss Clara, who is obsessed with imitating her dead mother, struggles to preserve her deteriorating sanity. Each day she edges nearer to a total break with reality. As a fan of weird horror, this book hit all the right notes with its disturbing, unhinged portrayal of its characters. Ojeda's experimental writing style and impressive prose make the unsettling story even more compelling. I see some reviews that call it pretentious, which makes me sad because I think the writing's beautiful. The influence of H.P. Lovecraft can be seen in what she is doing and how she elicits fear of the unknown and challenges perception of reality and madness. I'm fascinated by how the story delves into such dark and violent themes while keeping the unique writing style, creating an almost dreamlike and certainly disorienting atmosphere. Now, I recommend you check trigger warnings if you need to, but I think everything disturbing within the story either served the story or its themes, and none of it was done for the sake of being edgy in my perspective. The feminist elements in Jawbone are significant, and they are informed by Ecuadorian and Latin American culture. In a country where abortions are criminalized, the horrors related to bodily autonomy, female sexuality, and the portrayal of adolescent girls grappling with their bodies resonates with the broader feminist struggle in the region for control over the women's reproductive rights, which are often curtailed by religious and political forces. The portrayal of girls as both victims and agents of violence is a subversion of the traditional patriarchal views. This novel is both a powerful piece of feminist literature and a visceral and unsettling book, an incredible piece of literary horror. Now, these next couple books are on my TBR list for Hispanic Heritage Month, meaning to be read. First off is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I'm super excited to dive into this one. Silvia Moreno Garcia is a Mexican-Canadian novelist born in Mexico City, and her cultural background is an influence on her writing. The slow burn mystery set in a decaying mansion in 1950s Mexico sounds like it's going to be incredibly immersive and chilling. The synopsis. After receiving a frantic letter from her newlywed cousin begging for someone to save her from a mysterious doom, Noemi Taboada heads to High Place, a distant house in Mexican countryside. She's not sure what she'll find. Her cousin's husband, a handsome Englishman, As a stranger, Noemi knows little about the region. Noemi is also an unlikely rescuer. She's a glamorous debutante, and her chic gowns and perfect red lipstick are more suited for cocktail parties and amateur sleuthing. But she's also tough and smart, with an indomitable will, and she is not afraid. Not of her cousin's new husband, who is both menacing and alluring, not of his father, the ancient patriarch who seems to be fascinated by Noemi, and not even of the house itself, which begins to invade Noemi's dreams with visions of blood and doom. Her only ally in this inhospitable abode is the family's youngest son. Shy and gentle, he seems to want to help Noemi, but might also be hiding dark knowledge from his family's past. For there are many secrets behind the walls of High Place. The family's once colossal wealth and faded mining empire kept them from prying eyes, but as Noemi digs deeper, she unearths stories of violence and madness. And Noemi, mesmerized by the terrifying yet seductive world of High Place, may soon find it impossible to ever leave the enigmatic house behind. Now, I can't wait to uncover the secrets lurking in those eerie halls and get lost in this haunting story. I've heard so much about the dark atmospheric vibe, and that's exactly what I love in a good horror read. Next on the list is a tale that promises just as much suspense and maybe a little romance. The Hacienda blends the supernatural with history and heart, creating a mystery that is as chilling as it is emotional. It's a book I see compared to Mexican Gothic meets Rebecca. The Hacienda is by Mexican-American novelist Isabella Cañas. I'm really excited about how this book apparently blends various horror subgenres while still leaning into classic Gothic traditions. Here's the summary. In the overthrow of the Mexican government, Beatrice's father is executed and her home destroyed. When handsome Don Rodolfo Solorzano proposes, Beatrice ignores the rumors surrounding his first wife's sudden demise, choosing instead to seize the security his estate in the countryside provides. She will have her own home again, no matter the cost. But Hacienda San Isidro is not the sanctuary she imagined. When Rodolfo returns to work in the capital, visitors and voices invade Beatrice's sleep. The weight of invisible eyes follow her every move. Rodolfo's sister, Juana, scoffs at Beatrice's fears, but why does she refuse to enter the house at night? Why does she cook burned copal incense at the edge of the kitchen and mark the doorways with strange symbols? What really happened to the first Doña Solorzano? Beatrice only knows two things for certain. Something is wrong with the hacienda, and no one there will help her. Desperate for help, she clings to the young priest, Padre Andres, as an ally. No ordinary priest, Andres will have to rely on his skills as a witch to fight off the malevolent presence haunting the hacienda and protect the woman for whom he feels a powerful forbidden attraction. But even he might not be enough to battle the darkness. Far from a refuge, San Isidro may be Beatrice's doom. The idea of a mysterious haunted estate set in post-revolutionary Mexico sounds incredibly intriguing to me. And as someone with a soft spot for a good romance, I can't wait to see how the romantic elements are woven into the eerie and suspenseful story. This book promises a captivating mix of chills and heartfelt moments that I am eager to explore. All right, now that we've explored some truly unsettling horror novels, it's time to dive into the world of film. From found footage terror to emotionally charged ghost stories, I've got some incredible recommendations for you. Now let's kick things off with pure chaotic fear. This is Wreck. Wreck is a found footage horror movie from Spain which follows a TV reporter and her cameraman as they report firefighters responding to an emergency call at an apartment complex. They are quickly locked inside with the residents under strict quarantine orders as something sinister is happening in the building. This premiered at various European film festivals in 2007, around the same time that Paranormal Activity and Cloverfield repopularized the found footage horror genre. about a decade after the groundbreaking Blair Witch Project popularized the cinematic technique. While the Paranormal Activity movies scared me and my middle schooler friends during sleepovers at the time, no found footage entry I have ever seen could have prepared me for or scared me as much as Wreck did. This film is very unpredictable and skillfully captures feelings of claustrophobia and paranoia, of feelings that are amplified by a shaky first-person filming style. It makes you wonder what's lurking around the corner and stairwells are just out of frame. The scares are unrelenting, and once the chaos gets started, you're not giving any chance afterwards to catch your breath. The chaos and tension only builds until you reach its terrifying and memorable conclusion. Now, a lot of people hate on found footage nowadays. Many think it hasn't aged well and they're boring or not scary to watch with modern 2024 eyes. But if you feel this way, I challenge you to watch Wreck, as this may be my favorite, and it's probably the scariest found footage entry. After the intense, fast-paced horror of Wreck, let's slow things down a bit with Guillermo del Toro's haunting masterpiece, The Devil's Backbone. While this is probably the Mexican director's most disturbing film, this is maybe the most emotional horror movie ever, with an ending that might bring you to tears. It's not a traditional horror movie. I'd say it's a historical drama with magical realism, horror elements. Del Toro does a masterful job of blending fantasy and horror, truly unlike any other. It's a story of a haunted orphanage during the final years of the Spanish Civil War. It is a ghost story that is at points intense, but often deeply sad. It takes on similar themes as Pan's Labyrinth. A lot of this ghost story can be interpreted as a metaphor for the grief and trauma in Spain during the post-war period. The film uses the ghost to represent the past, haunting the characters in a similar fashion to how they were used in the book 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, another incredibly important storyteller in Latin American history. Now, while The Devil's Backbone was made 60 years after the Spanish Civil War ended, and only 25 years after the fascist reign of Franco ended after his death, it wasn't until 2005 the final statue of Franco was taken down and the EU officially condemned the dictatorship in 2006. This movie came out in 2001 at a time when wounds of life under fascism could still be felt. It's truly an incredible piece of art, intentionally told from the innocent point of view of children, trying to make sense of life in a hostile environment. It's a cautionary tale of the dangers of fascism and the disobedience needed to rise against it. Del Toro uses ghosts and monsters throughout his work and uses them as a backdrop for deeply human stories. They're parables. His films build the tension around scary ghosts or monsters only to hit the viewer with a gut punch, showing instead the horrors of human nature. As we leave behind the heart-wrenching beauty of The Devil's Backbone, we enter darker, more political waters with La Llorona. I recently watched La Llorona, and I was completely drawn by its atmosphere and suspense. The cinematography was stunning, creating a palpable tension that carried throughout the entire film. Now, to clarify, this is La Llorona, the 2019 Guatemalan film, not to be confused with the film from the same year, The Curse of La Llorona, which is part of the Conjuring franchise. La Llorona centers on a retired general from the Guatemalan Civil War who faces supernatural retribution for his past atrocities when the vengeful spirit of La Llorona, a weeping woman from local folklore, begins to haunt him and his family. As the general's home becomes a battleground between the living and the dead, the film explores themes of guilt, justice, and the haunting legacy of violence. But what really stood out to me, though, was how it used the folklore of La Llorona to tell a much deeper story about Guatemala's painful history. The film touches on the atrocities and acts of genocide committed during the Guatemalan Civil War, but it does so in a way that's both respectful and incredibly haunting. The spirit of La Llorona isn't just a ghostly figure, it's a representation of the unresolved trauma that the country still grapples with. The movie doesn't shy away from critiquing the legacy of violence left behind by corrupt leadership and the military dictatorship. Watching it, I felt like I learned a lot about Guatemala's past and how the wounds of war continue to haunt the present, similar to how it was shown in The Devil's Backbone. The way the supernatural elements in real-life history were intertwined was masterful, creating a layered narrative that felt both eerie and thought-provoking. It's definitely a film that sticks with you, not just for its scares, but for the important critiques it makes. Plus, it's always thrilling to see folklore come to life in a modern cinematic way. Now let's shift gears to a Chilean film I haven't seen yet, but I can't wait to dive into. This is The Wolf House. Once upon a time, there was a country within a country, from where nobody could escape. Maria, a girl from Colonia Dignidad in Chile, a kind of sectarian community tyrannically mastered by the ruthless Paul Schaefer, a German madman, religious fanatic, and child predator who would end up turning the place into a torture center at the service of a military dictatorship ruled by Augusto Pinochet. Is punished for having lost 3 pigs, so she decides to run away and take refuge in an abandoned house hidden in the forest. I am incredibly excited to watch The Wolf House. Not only does it promise dark, unsettling themes rooted in Chilean history and folklore, but the unique use of stop-motion animation adds a whole new level of intrigue. The film's surreal, handcrafted aesthetic I see in the trailer, I feel will amplify its nightmarish atmosphere, and I'm eager to see how the ambitious storytelling unfolds through such a distinctive, experimental medium. Finally, we have Poison for Fairies, a Mexican horror film I haven't seen yet, but I'm really looking forward to. Poison for Fairies is from one of Mexico's most celebrated horror directors, Carlos Enrique Taboada. It was released in 1986 during a wave of Mexican horror films from the 1960s to the 1980s that established the genre as a significant part of Mexican cinema. I haven't seen any of his films yet, but I understand that comparisons to the great Alfred Hitchcock are appropriate in their subtlety and their philosophy on suspense, that it's more about showing the audience the danger and drawing out the tension, keeping the audience on edge without revealing too much until the right moment. Here's the synopsis. In 1965, Mexico City, Flavia, a wealthy yet lonely schoolgirl, befriends Veronica, a young orphan who has a fascination with witchcraft. Veronica convinces Flavia that she is a real witch and forces her to be her assistant. The children's games gradually become more serious, and Veronica demands more from Flavia. I'm really excited to watch Poison for Fairies because it seems to offer exactly the kind of slow burn, atmospheric storytelling that I love. As a fan of Hitchcock and The Twilight Zone, I'm drawn to films that build tension through subtlety and psychological horror rather than relying on jump scares or gore. Though I certainly do love some good jump scares or gore. The idea that this movie explores ambiguity, where you're never quite sure what's real or imagined, sounds like the perfect kind of mind-bending experience that I enjoy. Very similar to the reasons that I love the book Jawbone I talked about earlier. I'm also excited to watch Poison for Fairies because it seems like the perfect fall movie, with the use of witchcraft, but also just giving me a great opportunity to watch one of the most defining works of Mexican horror cinema. Now that wraps up today's journey through Latin American and Spanish horror books and films in celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month. I hope you found some new additions to your reading or watch list and are as excited as I am to dive into these culturally rich and deeply unsettling stories. Horror is a great lens through which we can explore history, folklore, and the human condition. And these works do it in such a fascinating way. Thanks for joining me here in the Haunted Library, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more eerie recommendations. I have some fall videos planned for some scary book recommendations. So until next time, stay spooky, and I'll see you in the next video.